Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Appreciate your patience. I know we're a couple minutes behind on our live feed, but thank you for tuning in. And I promise to make it worth your while because, as you can see here, I am joined by Greg Crowe of Silver One Resources, who many of you, or maybe some of the long time from the beginning viewers have seen because we met Greg. Geez, that was last January, Greg. At the
It was January 2020, pre-COVID. That's right, when we last met.
Yeah, certainly the world has changed a bit, but you've been keeping busy, doing a lot on behalf of Silver One. And along those lines, since we have a lot of issues going on in the silver market, certainly some supply and demand numbers that I'm a little baffled to calculate myself, at least as I am told by the banks. And Greg, you're one of the people that is going to be counted on to bring silver to the market going forward. That's in addition to the context of the money printing. We have now the Biden New Green Deal. They're down here giving out tax rebates for solar panels. I'm getting videos popping up on YouTube, the commercials, and they're saying, get your solar panels for free and you'll never pay electricity again. There's some printing money to get people solar panels with silver. So Greg, I think they're going to be calling you sooner or later, and I appreciate you digging in. So first of all, how's everything going, and how are you today?
I'm doing just fine here, and a bit of a cloudy day here in Vancouver where I'm hanging out. But spring has sprung and the blossoms are blooming, and I think it bodes well for the upcoming silver market as well, because I think we're in the springtime.
Yeah, there is something nice about when those seasons change, and I see some parallels. I don't know when the season of the dollar will more overtly change. I think things are changing now. I'm getting reports out of Australia that the mints there are having a lot of discrepancies, we'll say. You know, we've covered the issues, and I know you've spoken about a lot of these, so perhaps I'll let you take it away and address, perhaps to start with, the question in our title that I heard you talk about recently of whether you think we will see $50 silver in 2021, and then we'll dig into what you're seeing on the supply side.
Well, sure, Chris. I don't usually give a price projection because you're inevitably wrong. It could go to 49, it could go to 51, it could go to 35. But let's just put it this way. I think the time is right for silver. You mentioned a couple of things. Supply demand. It's been in deficit for the last 5-6 years, essentially, with respect to supply. Demand is projected to increase. You talked about Biden and the green programs coming up and the solar panels. Let's not discount, another very key component of growth in silver, and we're talking electric vehicles, and electric vehicles are certainly taking off. I think Mr. Musk would agree with that. He seems to be doing quite well with his Tesla shares. But so what's the projection essentially for silver just in silver panels in cars? They're projected to increase by a couple of 100 million ounces in the next couple of years over what they're using right now. And that essentially is going to put further pressure on the supply of silver. The world's largest supplier of silver is Mexico. Mexico essentially is in decline in terms of production. Part of that in 2020 was offset by COVID, so there might be a little bit of uptick in 2021. But overall, there's been a steady decline over the last several years. There's very few true silver mines in the world. Silver is generally a byproduct of other commodities: copper, lead, zinc, gold. So to have a pure silver mine is a rare thing, and it's hard to find a silver company with pure silver deposits as well. Right now, our Candelaria project seems to be a pure silver project, but could there be other commodities further at depth, which we have yet to explore. So people are projecting ongoing issues with respect to inflationary pressures coming into the United States post-COVID with an economic boom. They talk about the upticking in the Treasury 10-year yield. They talk about inflation, real versus nominal inflation. What's the answer? It's hard to figure out. It really is. But if you look at the government specifications for inflation, which are around 1 to 1.5%, maybe 1.7%. But what's the real inflation, in terms of what's going on behind the scenes? And if we do come out of COVID and there is an economic boom, where are all those trillions of dollars that have been injected into the economy going to go? Essentially, they're going to go into inflation. And that generally will bode well down the road for gold and silver.
Well, that's what I thought too. And Greg, I know you rightly so mentioned these are some complex economic variables. I mean, it's really a wild derivative equation, not for mere mortals to even attempt to tackle, which is why grateful that on this Wednesday morning, we can just go directly to the chief himself. There's Jamie Dimon explaining of JP Morgan that the economic boom fueled by deficit spending and vaccines, this baby could just keep humming until 2023. And just to understand why he's so bullish on the economy's immediate future, a perplexing statement here. Jamie Dimon, CEO of the government's bank, I have little doubt that with excess savings, Greg, hopefully you can explain that part to me. I don't know where those are, but stimulus savings, huge deficit spending, more QE, a new potential infrastructure bill, a successful vaccine, and don't leave out euphoria around the end of the pandemic, that this boom could run into 2023. Is there anything, aside from the fact, political thoughts on this aside, is there anything in that paragraph that does not almost force silver higher?
Well, you mentioned something about excess savings. I'm not sure about, I don't know the stats in the United States, but here in Canada.
They're not good.
No. Here in Canada, what's happened is with COVID, people have hunkered down. They're not buying, they're not consuming as much. And apparently savings are going up at a record rate. So suddenly you get back into an economy where the kids want to go to the mall. The parents need a new electric vehicle. They got to go on their ski holiday. They got to hop on a plane and go somewhere. They're going to start spending those savings. Okay. And so that's really happened here, at least in Canada as well. Everything else I think that Jamie Dimon says is true. The only thing that may not necessarily be true is the 2023 figure. I think it's more like 2025, 2026. There's going to be an ongoing euphoria and boom. You suppress people for a year or a year and a half by the time COVID is really over, maybe even 2 years by the time it's completely over, and they're going to start partying. And yes, that'll be good, but that's going to put inflationary pressures, and that'll be good for silver and gold. Plus, as you mentioned, the new green revolution will be very good for silver. And that's worldwide. That's not just in the United States, but certainly the world's biggest economy will have a big, important component to play in the price of silver.
Yeah, and Greg, in terms of do we see $50 silver, I would say, at least in Jamie Dimon's world, there would be no reason to suspect such a silly thing. But
well, let's talk about $50 silver. When have we seen $50 silver in the past? We saw $50 silver in the 1980s. Hunt Brothers tried to corner the market, but that was due to massive inflationary pressures too. I mean, what did the inflation rates go up to? It was into the teens in the 1980s, and then we we saw the 2008 stimulus packages, which really had an effect with respect to, shall we say, spending habits in the United States, etc. And what happened was in 2008, we saw a suppression of silver and gold, but in 2010, we saw it rise up to 2011 to $50 per ounce. And then, of course, the stimulus packages that have been put out with COVID, they make the stimulus package after 2008 look like a little blip, shall we say. So what is going to be the pressure on silver and gold? I mean, some people have called for 100 plus silver. Is $50 possible? Yes, indeed, but I'm not going to put a date on it. So, but yes, indeed, it is possible.
And in terms of why it's possible, and I'll pull up these supply and demand numbers again. To me, the reason I always thought it was inevitable is because there's somewhere in there, and it's kind of a murky gray area, but you have a lot of leverage. You have all those fundamental factors you discussed. And it always seemed to me that once the investment demand kicks up, that's when you really run into trouble, because like, yeah, we see that industry's growing and, but it's not going to happen overnight. But if we look at let's see if I can get my chart up here, the Silver Institute numbers. And Greg, by all means, hey, do they know where every single ounce of silver in the world is? So if you have anything to add or would suggest that anything would be wise to alter here, but at least on what they're presenting, here we see last year, these were the projected numbers. You had a 318 million ounce deficit. And the main reason was because net investment in ETP, this is SLV and your other trusts. I mean, this was, ranging somewhere plus minus 100. Then that popped up to 350. By all the numbers I've seen, I mean, we may surpass that in the first quarter with the rate that people are buying metals. So it's seemed like you can keep this thing together when there's no investment demand, but there's a very small amount of investment demand. And now, to me, it feels like people are buying more than is really there. And now we're seeing a lot of quirky things pop up from the retailers and the dealers.
Well, there's a real shortage. Yeah, there's a real shortage on the delivery of physical silver right now, physical gold as well. There's issues with that. I mean, there was huge demand there in the run up over the last few months. That demand, I don't think it's really tapered off, but it certainly is still there. And they're still talking about shortages of physical silver. And, you can go down to your store and you can buy a silver coin if it's available, but you're paying 30-40% over spot in order to buy that silver coin. That wasn't always the case, but it is today. Is that going to continue? Well, supply demand. I mean, the Silver Institute, they talk about mine production. As I said, real silver mines are in decline, and easy silver, like easy gold, like easy copper, is more difficult to find. So it's going to get more expensive to mine, and not only will it get more expensive to mine, but the price of silver is going to increase, as is the price of gold. And that's my belief. I won't give you the exact date when that will happen. We're still struggling coming out of COVID, but there's going to be a major turnaround. The other big factor out there that with respect to silver prices, gold prices, they're both measured in US dollars. And the US dollar is an important component on essentially the world financial reserve. Without the, shall we say, continued faith in the US dollar, which it's been a little shaky lately, shall we say, then
generous of you, Greg. That's quite generous and diplomatic.
But without that continued faith down the road, I mean, look at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin generally rises with gold, although we've seen a bit of a divergence lately. But essentially, why is Bitcoin taking off? Because people are losing confidence in the US dollar as a world reserve currency. Um, so what happens when the US dollar decreases? Well, gold prices go up, silver prices go up. And if you have a economy that's chugging away, then other commodity prices are going to increase as well. And those commodity prices, we've joked a little bit about, Goldman Sachs, but Goldman Sachs has predicted the beginning of a 10-year plus bull market in commodities, and that includes gold and silver. So no matter what you think about Goldman, these statements are there, and others are making
We're
the
big
same.
fans on the we're big fans of over here. They have a commodity expert named Jeff Curry that provides some. He does think the commodity bull market is kicking up, and obviously, chief of Goldman is like called the maestro or something. But yes, it's not just. I mean, some people say, "Well, why do you just focus on silver?" I mean, if they're going to print money, wouldn't all these go up? And yeah, I'd agree. I'd rather have. I mean, you could let me throw darts blindly at a commodity board, and I take my chances with that over treasuries. Although, Greg, you mentioned Bitcoin here. I have a question. Don't worry, I won't make you comment too much on Bitcoin, or you can share any thoughts you'd like. Yet, here we see in 2016 the thing's 500, $400, and then today it's up to 56,000. So by my old, let's see if my mock trader math is still in there somewhere. That's about 120 bagger.
Yep.
Now we don't have to debate, is Bitcoin the solution or blockchain or any of that, but just to the degree that can we agree that some people view it as something that can't be printed, and that some of the appeal is towards that. And I just think if Bitcoin in the last 5 years has been 120 bagger, and then silver still at half of its not only 2011 high. Let's see, where's Bitcoin in 2011? Does the chart even go that far back? I'm not on this one, but I mean, silver's at half of its 1980 high. And I would suggest that the people that really understand what the Fed is doing, and really like anyone I've ever met who actually grasps even some portion of what's really going on in the Federal Reserve, how much money is being printed, how much, what it goes to. I mean, they go to gold, but those are the people who really get it. Either I'm completely wrong, or the people I know, they all favor silver for those exact reasons. So it's like the greatest inflationary environment in the history of the planet. Doesn't it? I mean, it seems like when silver goes, there's a case to be made that what if it does something like Bitcoin? I'll actually make this into a question. Why would silver not eventually have to do, maybe not as big as Bitcoin, but I just don't see how Bitcoin does that. Silver's there.
Well, Bitcoin is a little bit of a unique situation where there is a extremely limited supply. It's difficult to mine Bitcoin, okay, and getting more and more difficult. Now, sure, they can half Bitcoin and start the process again. Silver, being a physical commodity, is directly tied into, unless you're one of the conspirators who believes in the manipulation of the silver prices, but it's tied a lot to supply and demand. And that supply is dictated by how much physical silver is in the ground and how easy and economically it can be extracted. That's becoming more and more difficult. Not only because, as I mentioned earlier, easy silver is more difficult to find, but where there is easy silver, some of those and a lot of those lie in jurisdictions that don't allow you to get in there and mine. It's either unsafe, or the taxation regime or the government regime just doesn't allow you to be in there. And that seems to be a problem worldwide. There's only a few real jurisdictions that I like to work in, okay, around the world. And fortunately, Silver One's properties are in 2 of those jurisdictions. So that's why we're focusing on what we're focusing on.
Yeah, and Greg, that's actually a perfect lead in because as folks can see here, we're looking at USA and Mexico. And can you give an overview for people and touch on how Silver One fits in this as well? But when they're thinking about the different jurisdictions, and partly I actually have a note here. I'd like if I could quickly read a bit about your background, and we'll also I let folks know that you're kindly going to take some questions today too, because a lot of people getting into this have questions about what to look at with these projects,
Sure.
and that's something you're an expert in. And real quick here, Mr. Crowe's key role in helping to bring about this highly successful development story attests to his ability not only to build companies, but to successfully navigate political and partnership issues and to strategically maneuver through cyclical variations in commodity markets. Certainly, as I've been learning more about mining, I understand. I mean, we see right now, First Majestic, they have an issue with taxes with the Mexican government. You know, it's something going to have to be resolved one way or another. And so I appreciate your background and expertise. And what could you say, starting with the Nevada and Mexico jurisdictions?
Well, first of all, one thing for investors in our company or potential investors in our company to be aware of is we've actually sold off our Mexican assets. Okay, we sold those off a couple of months ago, and I think we got a pretty good deal for it. We've got some cash, additional cash in the treasury, and we've got a large share position in the company that took those shares, those properties off of us. So we're really focusing on Nevada and Arizona. And if you look at the Fraser Institute, which is one of the world's leading, shall we say, organizations with respect to, the statistics for mining around the world, Nevada and Arizona are essentially 2 of the top mining jurisdictions in the world. Essentially good taxation, good permitting. Yes, it takes time and you do have to follow the rules, but at least there's the rule of law. You can go to some other jurisdictions around the world, and the rule of law seems to be dictated by, in some places, in some instances, the greed of the various people that are in control. And that's not always a good thing. That's why I favor the jurisdictions like Nevada and Arizona. There are a few other jurisdictions around the world that I like, but in my previous life, shall we say, pre-Silver One, I was involved heavily in a company. I was actually president and CEO of a company that was working alongside Ivanhoe Mines in Mongolia. And that was a real roller coaster with respect to dealing with the government and negotiating, shall we say, the security of my company's assets in Mongolia. We were successful in doing that, but it was a very steep learning curve, shall we say.
Yeah, although I think that's the fun part, is that sometimes these things are a little challenging as we're going through them, but then you look back years later and you have that experience to draw from, which I think is quite important in the mining sector as well. And Greg, perhaps you could touch on the history of the Flagship Candelaria project. Actually, an interesting background, some of the previous partners. That's one of the things I always love hearing, because it's like, all right, where did this project come from? Because I don't know, let's say I was looking for a new project, and I think, all right, what would somebody else overlook, or what, and it's interesting the ways these come about. So perhaps you could start there.
Sure. Well, Candelaria, it has quite a bit of history behind it. And if you look at Nevada itself in particular, Nevada is known as the Silver State. And the Silver State essentially started in the mid 1800s. And Nevada was actually brought into the state of the Union post the Civil War in order to help pay down the Civil War debt through the proceeds from all the silver mines. So Nevada is known as the Silver State. Candelaria itself was actually discovered in 1864, and that was a year before the end of the US Civil War. It started production and it produced for a number of years up until 1959 from near surface high grade silver veins. And it produced on average grade of 1,250 grams per ton silver. It's extremely high grade. It was one of the richest silver mines in the state of Nevada. Now, if you compare that to mines today, I mean, look at, people get excited about Mag Silver. Mag Silver is a great company and it's got some great projects with great partners in Mexico, but their average grades are 700-800 grams. If you look at Exelon, one of the highest grade producers currently in Mexico, they have grades up to 1,000 grams per ton. Well, Candelaria kind of looks like they have those types of grades as well. Now, post the 60s, big companies came in, Nurco, Occidental, followed by Kinross, and they decided to put it into open pit reduction and I see production. And I see that you put up a couple of slides there of some of the big open pits. Well, there's two big open pits there, and they produced up until 1997. That was Kinross, was the last producer. They shut down when silver prices collapsed well under $5 per ounce silver. We went down to about $2.50, I think it touched on during that period. And don't forget, that was the time of the big run up in .com companies. Everybody was diving into tech companies, okay? Well, that came down to a screaming halt in 2001. But Candelaria had been shut down by Kinross in 97, 98. They turned off the taps on the big heap leach pads. They left behind a lot of silver. They sold it off to Silver Standard, who looked at it in 2002, and they did some studies, but silver prices were still languishing under $5 per ounce. And they said, no, we're going to take our company in a different direction. And they outlined a big historical resource and they moved on. And I just happened to walk through Silver Standard's door at an opportune time. It was late 2016, early 2017. They were completely rebranding their company. They were becoming focused on gold mining in Nevada, and they actually changed their name to SSR Mining. So they got rid of silver in their company's name, and they started selling off a lot of their silver assets. So Candelaria was there, and I looked at it, and we did a great deal on it, and we've been working on Candelaria for the last 3-4 years now.
Although, Greg, to be completely accurate, as I hear it, you didn't quite walk in the door. I heard you were more rolling in the door. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by rolling, but
I heard you got a call while you were on your bicycle. You were in retirement.
Oh no, that was not from Silver Standard. That was getting into Silver One. Yes, yeah. Indeed. No, you're right. When I retired from my last stint with a company that was operating in Mongolia, and retired in 2015, and my wife gave me 6 months. She said I would only last 6 months in retirement, but to spite her, I lasted 8 months. And I was out cycling around. I decided to take up cycling. That was my new thing. But you can only cycle so far before you kind of get see the same thing over and over again. I was cycling around Stanley Park, and I got a phone call, and I stopped to take the phone call, and they said, "Please come to a meeting." And I said, "Sure, I'll come to a meeting, but when?" I said, "I'm on my bike right now." They said, "Well, come right now. You were just downtown, and come to the meeting." So I went to the meeting, and they must have liked my spandex, because they offered me a very good opportunity to start a new silver company, and that's become Silver One. So I'm back in the saddle.
Yeah, and perhaps you could talk about just what it's like, because I know, especially here in the U.S., we're trying to think, all right, we're going to go try and go on Wall Street or do something, make a lot of money, and then retire. Yep. And it's like, what are you going to do? Like, just sit there and stare at the wall after that? And I always find it intriguing, especially with the mining guys. And it's similar to how I feel about doing a show. I mean, someone gave me $1 billion today, I'd still be interested in silver and
Yep.
talking about it. And I think that's similar, where it's like, it's funny that your wife didn't think you would last long, but what is it that, when you have the opportunity, that what you've done in life, that you could sit there and go sailing, but what is it that drew you back in, about just the process, but also the particular project?
Yeah, well, I'm a geologist by training. I have 2 degrees in geology, and I fell in love with geology in my early university days, in my mid-20s. That was more than a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I just fell in love with geology, and I loved being out and looking at things. And then I got into the economic side of geology, and I got on junior resource companies. I worked for several major companies as well in my past, and I just really enjoyed. I like getting out. I looking at these projects, and you get excited. There's something about looking at minerals in the ground that gets you excited, be it gold, be it silver, be it copper, whatever it is. So it's kind of in your blood, and to sit down and suddenly to stop doing it, you sort of say, well, geez, I kind of missed that excitement. And I get excited about silver now. I used to get excited about copper and gold. Not that they're bad commodities, but I'm just very interested in silver these days.
Yeah, and I could imagine, especially when you have your background and you see what's going on in the world, and you see silver, I guess probably around somewhere between 15, $20 when you were riding your bike that day. And it's like, gee, it's a good time if I can find silver
Well,
to go do it.
Yeah, no, the whole concept then was silver, I think, was around $22, okay, back in mid 2016. And some people were projecting then it was going to go to $50, $60 again. It didn't quite work out. The policies changed in the US, and it was a real stimulus for the Dow, et cetera, and the markets, and it kind of took the fizzle out of the gold and silver thing. But at the time, yeah, silver was looking really good, and the whole idea was, let's start a new silver company. And one of the people that's one of the major investors in my company is a fellow by the name of Keith Neumeyer. And Keith Neumeyer, has a very successful silver company called First Majestic, got 3 operating mines in Mexico. They're a $2+ billion market cap company. And he's looking pretty good this year with his with the silver prices where they're at. Keith was one of the people who convinced me to get back in the saddle, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly quite a fan of Keith myself. He was in the book, The Big Silver Short, that I did. And I think everyone in the silver space, I don't know, not everyone is grateful or owes him anything, but I think a lot of us really appreciate what he has done. And Greg, we have some questions coming in. I've got a couple more, but let's get right to the crowd if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Great question here. We'll start with Mike Foley. Says, what supply chain shortages could impact mining production moving forward?
Well, as I said, there's very few silver mines, pure silver mines in the world. So it's really a function of a byproduct of other mines in the world. And we see other mines in the world, some of them run into difficulty. We see governments disrupting supplies, removing licenses. So until we see a resurgence of a lot of copper mining, and people are talking about that now, but you don't see the new mines just coming in just yet. We see one of the biggest copper mine developments in the world, which is the Rio Tinto BHP Resolution mine in the state of Arizona. It's had its ups and downs with respect to the final permitting and the land swaps that are required. And even though they were given approvals under the previous U.S. administration, this administration has said, well, let's rethink this a little bit. So, when is that one going to be coming into production. And, how much silver is in that one? I'm not sure how much silver, but the one that I was working on in Mongolia, Oyu Tolgoi, had a significant silver component associated with it. But, that one's well into the mine life now, and that's not really new supply. So what's the supply chain going to be like? I mean, maybe there'll be a new discovery, but if there isn't a new discovery, we've been in deficit now for the last about 5 years. And we are projected to have increased demand. Don't forget, silver is not just a precious metal, it's an industrial mineral, and probably 65% of the use of silver is pure industrial. And electric vehicles, solar panels you mentioned, but for all of the Hollywood types out there, don't forget the vanity factor. Mirrors are extremely important with respect to the continued use of silver. And whether you like it or not, silverware is a major component, and it's actually increasing quite a bit in the medical industry as well. So the supply is increasing. People are really starting to appreciate it. Will the supply chain be there? Don't know, unless there's a major new discovery, and we'll see how things go.
Yeah, and that's right, Greg. If you also want to get a silver pyramid like that, silver makes great jewelry too. I just had my silver cufflinks delivered the other day, so we're upgrading the look here. And although something you touched on there that I've been thinking about recently, and you'd be the perfect person to comment on, to put in perspective, where let's say, retail buys an extra 100 million ounces or so of silver. Even if you need an extra 100, because so much is coming as a byproduct where that's not reflected, that's not driven by underlying silver demand. If people need less copper, you're going to get less silver. So even if let's say the price goes up to 30 or 40 bucks and some of the mining companies turn on a few new projects, in the grand scheme of things, we're not talking about, well, we produced 1 billion last year and we're going to produce 1.5 billion this year. It's not anywhere that big, even at a higher price. Is that right?
Yeah, well, you look at some of the potential new mines that might come into production. I mentioned Mag Silver. They have a very nice mine. I'm not sure what exactly that would do to increase, but it's certainly not going to be 100 million ounces per se. And if you're increasing 100 million or 200 million ounces, as I mentioned, in the next 2 or 3 years, just for electronic vehicles and for solar panels, where is that coming from? I don't see the mines there that are going to produce it. You're going to have to bring in either other historic mines like our Candelaria or some of the smaller mines in Mexico. Even though it's a big silver producer, the mines are small in Mexico. You might get one that's 10 million ounces, you might get one that's 20 million ounces or 30 million ounces. And how much can you produce? So there's a lot of exploration required. And there's a lot of work required in bringing those mines into production. And the average time it takes to bring a mine into production is somewhere between, I'm going to be generous and say, if you've got one that's a real slam dunk, you might get it in 5 to 6 years. But in reality, you're looking at 10. The one that I worked on in Mongolia was discovered in 1995 and didn't go into production until close to 2011. These things take time, a lot of work, a lot of permitting, a lot of testing, a lot of drilling, a lot of money.
Yeah. And how about I'll follow that up with an impossible question that probably has no answer, since it's really, it reminds me of multivariate derivative concepts I studied in my option trading day with all these moving pieces. So let's leave out even the time lag of how long it takes to turn these new projects on. And not that there's an exact answer, but maybe if a ballpark figure or even an explanation pops to mind. Let's say that retail wants to buy an extra 200 million ounces of silver, or there's more industrial demand. To get an extra, let's say 200 million ounces, how high would the price have to be? Because, right, we have some projects that would get turned on at $30 silver. Some would get turned on at $35. But I mean, to get 100 or 200 million ounces.
Well, the The annual production right now is somewhere between 750 and 800 million ounces. Okay, that's the mine production. There's some scrap, but the amount of scrap material is decreasing as well. So to add 200 million ounces, it'd be about another 25% increase. That's on a worldwide basis. Where are you going to find that? Let's say you did bring some mines into production. Some of those mines might, as I said, have 10 or 20 or 30 million ounces. You're not going to produce it all in that 1 year. A lot of mines just produce somewhere between 2 and 5 million ounces a year. You know, some of the bigger companies, Hecla and Crowe, of course, produce a lot more. But to find another 200 million ounces, well, you know, people might sell it out of their vaults. You know, some countries are storing silver like they store gold, not to the same level, perhaps. But where are you going to find it? That'll only put pressure, upward pressure on the price. So where will that price go to? You tell me. I mean, supply demand. Suddenly you want an extra 200 million ounces of silver. I think that would put a lot of pressure on the upward momentum and price of silver.
Yeah, it's almost, as you were explaining, I'm thinking it kind of almost feels like it would, in a sense, be impossible at the current price level without there being some mystery supply. And again, you know, the banks make everything as untransparent as possible. So there is some gray area, but either case, we have a great question here on the Candelaria project from Susan Shelton. Ask about the silver content of the 2 leach pads at Candelaria and the 2 processes his company is considering to mine it. And Greg, if I could add one twist before you take that, can you explain to people who might not know what a leach pad is, and as much as possible, simplify that answer so everyone can enjoy it?
Oh, God. Okay. I will try and do that. First of all, when you process the silver, such as Kinross did at Candelaria, they essentially mine the material out of the open pit. They crush it down to about 3/4 of an inch in size, and they put it on in big piles. Those are called leach pads. Then they essentially put up a sprinkler system, and they put in chemicals to essentially extract the silver out of the leach pad, and they collect that in pools, and then they run it through various circuits to recover the silver at the end. Those leach pads, there's 2 big leach pads at Candelaria. Each one essentially contains material that average grade is approximately 42 grams per ton silver. And I'll tell you exactly how much is in there. I've actually got it up here myself. Essentially, the big leach pad at Candelaria has approximately 30 million ounces of silver. That's a fair amount of silver that's already been mined and is sitting on the surface. It averages, as I said, approximately 42 grams per ton silver. That's about 1.5 ounces silver. Is that economic to recover? Well, that's the work that we're currently doing. We're doing metallurgical work right now to find the best way to recover the silver out of this leach pad. There's a second leach pad there that has another additional 15 million ounces of silver. So at the same grade. Now, if you want to put that, I guess, in context, what does that 42 grams per ton equate to? Well, if we look at an existing big operation in Nevada, there's one called Rochester Mine, which is run by a company called Crowe, one of the big silver mining companies of the world. It's located in the northern part of Nevada. And they're operating there, and they are mining silver oxide ore out of open pits. They're putting it on leach pads, and they're leaching it. And their average head grade is 15 grams per ton silver. We've got 42 grams per ton silver already mined. Can we make a go of it? Well, the only thing about ours versus theirs, there's essentially using fresh ore, whereas we are using ore that has already been partially leached. So we need to do our additional metallurgical studies. I said to you before, it takes a few years to bring a mine into production, do your studies and get it permitting. But on top of that, we're also building in-ground resources through our drill programs. We just completed a 15,000 meter reverse circulation and diamond drill program to build on, in essence, a historical resource that was worked out by Silver Standard. And the only reason we deem it to be historical is because it used to be 43101 compliant, but it's too old. But we're drilling, and those historical resources came up to amount to about 44 million ounces of silver at the measured and indicated level, and an additional 35 million ounces of silver at the inferred. That's in ground. That's in addition to what's on the heaps. So there's big potential at Candelaria. It just takes time in order to, shall we say, evaluate it and do our testing so that we can find the best method, most economic method of extracting that silver. And that's what we're doing right now.
Well, appreciate that. And Greg, something I know people always like to hear about. Eric Sprott is one of your investors, and actually right around the time we were hanging out last year in Vancouver, it looks like that was pretty close to Frick. Eric Sprott increased his investment. So could you talk about what in particular drew his attention? What is it that he liked, that what appealed to him on this deal?
Yeah, essentially, I first met Eric Sprott in mid 2019. So that was before essentially met you at the conference here in Vancouver. And Eric, what he really liked about Silver One at the time, we really only had the Candelaria project and our Mexican silver projects. We had just acquired through staking our projects in Eastern Nevada, but they're kind of early stage. So that wasn't really what interested him. What interested him was the past mining at Candelaria, the size of the historic resource, and the potential to essentially bring this to a more advanced development stage. That's what attracted him originally. Then when I met you in January, he invested again in our company. And then he invested again in mid 2020. We did a 9.5 million Canadian financing. He put in an additional $5 million into the company. So he's been a very, very faithful shareholder. Now, one thing that attracted him as well, coming into the company in July of 2020, is we had acquired a new project in Arizona called Silver Phoenix. And I'm just going to grab a piece of that material for you to look at. Give me 2 seconds.
All right. And I'll pull up the page on the website so we can get a snapshot while Greg brings us some silver.
Okay, so essentially, there aren't many, shall we say, places around the world where you see silver material that kind of looks like this. Can you see that?
Oh.
Okay, that's what you're looking at. All that glitters is silver. And that essentially piece that we had analyzed off our project in Arizona came back. We had to do a special ore grade quality assay because regular assay, it's too rich for it. Came back and it returned 459,000 grams per ton silver, or 14,500 ounces per ton. Now, this is an extremely unique situation. You don't see many places around the world. One place where you see values like this is a place called Cobalt, Ontario in northern Canada. And that was a old silver camp that produced silver and cobalt, but they had samples like that. And they produced over 70 million ounces of silver historically. People are back there now, of course, looking for more. But this one here is essentially, it's an old silver camp. And they did talk about native silver, but nobody's found values like this. So we're going in looking for the source. These are actually big fragments sitting on the surface. And there's not much outcrop. So we got to find the source of this mineralization. We've applied for a drill program, and we hope to get in there in the next few months and get the drills in there and see if we can find the source of that. We're also finding a lot more of this on surface as well as we speak. So we've got a very interesting project in Arizona, which will certainly enhance our Candelaria project as well.
Yeah, and Greg, can you hold it up one more time? It looks quite beautiful. And how does a silver?
There's a picture on my website of it as well.
Wow, actually, I think I have that. I see it in the background on the website. How does one get? How do people get one of those? Where do I go to get one of those? Is that we get Greg some nice dinners and Christmas cards, or come on down and check out the land, or how do we get one?
Well, if you go and look at that one photograph on my website, I don't know if you can pull it up or not. Let's see if you can find it there. I think it's slide 32.
Corporate presentation?
Oh, no. Okay. Well, okay. These nuggets here. Okay. Go back to that one, first of all. That last photograph, if you can.
This one?
Now, yeah. Now, these vein fragments, the one in the middle weighs 417 pounds. And we actually didn't do an assay on it because it's a collector's item. You'd have to whack off a piece of it, and we didn't want to destroy it. That one there, we did specific gravity measurements. It's estimated to contain over 70% silver, that one there. These are so angular, so unabraded, that we think we're very close to the source. And that's part of the area that we're going to be drilling. But if you go down in the presentation and you find the photograph with this guy sitting in it, a little bit further down the presentation. Keep going, way down. Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure whether, is it up there?
I'm not in the presentation
yet. Go into the presentation.
Is on
it's on the home. It's on the home page. If you click on the home page and you go down, scroll down. Presentation. More right there.
By the way, with some of those big silver blocks, Greg, I've been throwing it out on Twitter, like silver weight sets, you get bench press that thing. Yeah. You look like you've been lifting it a little bit, that big rock.
Well, that's one of my passions as well, is just working out as well. So I do that. Go to the PD. Yeah, just scroll down. Keep scrolling down. You're doing fine. Keep going. Right. Going all through Candelaria. Now we're into the Cherokee project in Eastern Nevada. Keep going. Now we're hitting. Okay, go back up. I think
I passed it. Was it this one?
Nope, one more. There you go. So the one on the left is this fragment here, but you see the ones on the right actually took a bigger piece and sliced it up. If you're really kind to me, post-COVID, I might be able to get you a small slice of that.
Ooh. I'm gonna call my friend Gary and find out what Greg likes, and maybe we'll throw a surprise there for us. They're just beautiful, and
yeah, they are. They're quite spectacular. And as I said, you don't see samples like this very often around the world. So, there's a couple of small, and it doesn't take much silver to rack up the ounces. So for instance, okay, just as a theoretical, if we were to find this type of material and we were to find as little as 10,000 tons, now, to put that into perspective for somebody, that would be an area that would be about 250 feet by 250 feet by about half a foot to a foot wide. That's a very small area for a mine. That would contain more silver than the entire historical resources of 70 million ounces at Candelaria. So it's not going to take a lot. Just got to find the source of these veins. Can we really, and that could really rack up the silver ounces.
Well, it certainly seems like you're in a good time at a good place. We'll take a quick look what is happening on the silver chart today, where it's just darn flat. Nothing's happening.
Yep.
And
Yeah, still
anything
hanging in that
driving.
still hanging in that $25 range, which I like, and something to think about for your investors to think about. Prior to 2008, we kind of saw the silver prices kind of in the single digit numbers. Okay, after 2008, we saw them in the teens. Post COVID, we're now seeing them in the 20s. Is this the new base price for silver going forward?
I think Janet Yellen is pretty committed to making sure that it is, which is why I appreciate everything that you've shared with us here today, Greg. Obviously, you have a lot of experience. You're one of the people we're counting on to bring great silver to the world. And perhaps before we wrap up, anything that we didn't touch on that people should know, or any other parting thoughts today?
People should be aware that we do have a third project in eastern Nevada called Cherokee. It's a very rich silver, copper, and gold system that was mined a little bit back in the late 1800s in the thousands of grams per ton silver range. It's another great project. It's earlier exploration, but we think there's a lot of potential there. We actually got it through staking and purchased the patented claims. We have 100%, and we're going to be back there this year doing some more exploration on that one. So another great opportunity as well. We're really happy. We're really happy with Nevada and Arizona. I think they are indeed the best mining jurisdictions in the world.
Yeah, and actually one final one for me, just if you could touch on the share structure real quick, because I know people always like hearing about that, and if you could just a quick walk through there.
Oh, there you go there. Okay, so Eric Sprott's about, just 17%. You see the issued and outstanding there, just over 200 million, fully diluted about 250. We've got about $12 million in our treasury still, even though we've done a $4 million drill program at Candelaria over the past several months. Those results, by the way, will be starting to come out. We put out some initial results about a month and a half ago. The rest of the results are going to come out in the next few weeks. We're just waiting for assays to come out from the labs. They're a little slow right now. And then you'll see the other big shareholders in the company as well. And we do trade good volumes on both the exchanges. I think if we look at the volumes, I just got to check that here. Like on the US exchange, we generally trade somewhere between 325,000, 350 shares a day, whereas on our Canadian exchange, we trade over 700,000 shares a day average. We have multiple plus million share day trades as well. So we're a fairly fluid, liquid stock, shall we say, for a junior company.
Yeah, and Greg, perhaps can you just let folks know for any follow-up questions, if they want to get the detailed presentation or walk through any of this, what's the best way to contact and get?
Yeah, well, I think of the last slide there, you'll see the investor relations, and best thing to do is to email Gary. There he is there, Gary at stratastar.com, strata-star.com, and I will make sure that you get whatever it is that you need. As long as it's information that's in the public domain, it's yours to have. But go to our website, a lot of information on the website.
Well, I appreciate that. And that website is in the description field right there below. So you don't have to type it in, just go and click. And I'd like to also extend a thank you to Gary Lindsay that I met. I guess that was the same time I met as you, and both of you have been quite supportive of what we've been doing here. And I sure do appreciate that. Appreciate you spending some time with us today. Great lesson. A lot of important topics we covered. I learned a bit, and I'm guessing people did at home as well. So Greg will look forward to following the success of the projects. And I think it's an exciting time, and congratulations on everything you've accomplished. And I think this decision you made to come out of retirement one more time, at least one more time, is going to be paying off for you in the end.
Well, my wife has already asked me what I'm going to do post Silver One, so well, I guess we'll find out.
Okay, so maybe she wants to do a couple more.
I think she likes me out of the house.
Well, I hear you, and I think we'll all benefit from your experience, especially in this world where it's hard to imagine where some of the silver is going to come from. But we'll look forward to checking in with you again soon, Greg.
Well, Chris, great talking to you, and stay in touch.
Will do, my friend.
Okay, thank you.
And we are clear.